And yet again, another episode of Jeeping with Cool Guy. Let's tear apart some stuff. On today's episode of Jeeping with Cool Guy, or actually on tonight's episode of Jeeping with Cool Guy, we're going to replace the bottom joint coupling of the steering shaft that goes from the steering column down to the steering box underneath the front of the frame. This is a fairly common problem because really this boot, what happens is this boot winds up deteriorating, cracking, and then all of the stuff that's on the inside of it starts to either rust or get excessively worn. So if you got a steering wheel that has a lot of play in it, it could be the joint, and it could also be this. Of course, there's other things. Your steering box may be screwed up. Steering column, your actual steering column could be a little bit worn. Ball joints, whatever. Point is that we're going to replace this today. But before we get started, what I want to tell you ahead of time is that obviously I've already taken this all apart, and I've powder coated everything. So powder coated the coupling, the pressure clamps. You can't powder coat the actual steering shaft because there's two plastic pins in here that are breakaway pins. So in the course of you're in a front end accident, the steering column, both the shaft and the column itself, are designed to collapse. So this thing has about this far to go if this thing ever were to be hit and forced in. So point is that you can't powder coat this because of those plastic pins. Now, if you wanted to, you could powder coat them and replace the plastic pins, but that's actually, from what I found, is very difficult because I haven't been able to find these safety pins, and it's all broken down by the amount of pounds per square inch upon compression, and you know, it's a whole safety thing. So I'm not going to mess with that because that is way beyond my realm of knowledge. So let's get to putting this thing back together. One of the toughest things, or the toughest part of restoring this, is getting this boot over this post. I've already done this on the other Jeep, but I wanted to film this particular part out of all the other components the most because I saw this one guy on here that used a press to push this through so that he could fit the boot back over it, and then pressed it back in and did some really crazy stuff. You can get these things on. It's going to take a little bit of work, but what you're going to need to do is to have a heat gun to kind of warm it up a little bit to get it more pliable. And then you're going to have to use a lot of soap for the most part. I just used Dawn and a screwdriver, and I kind of stretch it over the top. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, so I'm going to give this thing a little bit of a squirt. Really, be liberal about this. It's soap. It's not going to hurt it. And if you want, you just wash it off afterwards. But you're going to want to lube this thing up as much as you possibly can. I also want to use a heat gun. Get this toasted up a little bit. Not too hot. This is rubber. You know, you don't want to melt it. It also doesn't hurt to have a little bit of water. Help with that lubrication process. So this is going to be kind of a trial and error. Use the screwdriver as leverage. Well, let's try it this way. I'm going to put it over the top of this side post and see if I can't stretch it over the other end. Alright, so there. See if I can show you with light. So now you can see how I got it stretched over one post, and I've stretched it over the bottom. Now what I want to do is take the screwdriver There you go. wedged up and over. Then you just kind of want to get the rest of the accordion ribs over the top of those posts. And there. Now you've replaced your boot and you didn't damage anything. So really you just want to use a small screwdriver, kind of wedge it up and over, heat this up a little bit so that it stretches out. Use a lot of soap and some water and some patience, and you can wedge it up over these posts. All right, let's put the rest of this stuff together. You have this holding clasp that fits sideways over the top of the two pins. And then you have these two, I want to say a slider blocks that actually slide up and back and forth on the inside grooves of the main housing coupling. This is so that it has a little bit of give as you're rotating the thing. It can move forward and backwards a little bit. Really, all you need to do is just put these kind of sliding caps over the end of those posts, just like that. Get that pressed on there. Apparently I've got too much paint on that. Anyways, so this coupling, this bracket does nothing more than keep these things squared up on the posts as they slide back and forth. Then get yourself some grease, and you don't want to go overload on this. You just need enough to lubricate the slide grooves inside of the coupling. It really does not need to be a lot. Alright, that should be about enough. Alright, now we've got the grease on there. Get our hands cleaned up. All you need to do is slide this thing on to the two sliding blocks. That's really it. I mean, how complicated is that? Then you want to make sure that you get your boot seated in the top of the coupling. So you just kind of push that down far enough to where your retaining ring will fit inside of the grooves on both sides. And that may take a little bit of pushing and prodding. Last but not least, you take your retaining ring. One thing to note on this retaining ring is one of the ends is tapered up, bent up and over, so that when you put it inside of the coupling, it overlaps like that. Just because this thing compresses farther than the length will allow without that bend. So just slide that in, get the notches into the grooves or the slots that are cut out. Alright, there we go. Well, I have to do a little bit of touch-up paint on everything that was powder coated, because when you're scraping that stuff around, even the powder coating comes off a little bit. But we've got the clamp in there. Got the wire all lodged in. Everything's all put together, and it should, see how it kind of slides and expands, and push the boot down a little bit. There. That's how it's supposed to be. That's good. Nice. Pretty solid. And then you have your clamp, post clamp, that obviously goes in one way because of how it's configured to have that screw or the bolt go through and rest inside of that that slot. Now obviously you'll need to take this off before you put it onto the steering box, but just making sure that you got it all lined up. And there you go. You have now replaced and fixed your steering shaft coupling link. I don't know about you boys and girls, but I had a great time tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Let's build the user base. Because long live the CJ7.